Pripyat, northern Ukraine. This was just one of many thousands of similar provincial cities spread right across the former Soviet Union. Home to around 49,000 people, it had all the usual facilities: schools, shops, kindergartens, several swimming pools and a hospital. Being on the river, it even had a small harbour and a cafe where people could enjoy weekend boat rides. Despite being under the communist regime at the height of the Cold War, the city had its fair share of good times. In the parks, children played, friends met, couples fell in love, and the song of life was sung as openly and as enthusiastically here as just about anywhere else on the planet. In April 1986, the flowers were starting to bloom and the days were getting longer. Pripyat's inhabitants were preparing to celebrate the end of a long winter and the coming of spring, culminating with the traditional May Day parade. The children were especially looking forward to the opening of a new amusement park, built especially for the occasion. But little did anyone know that the celebrations would never take place. In the early hours of Saturday the 26th, an event so powerful would hit Pripyat and spell disaster not just for the people that lived there, but potentially the whole world.
Добрый вечер, товарищи.
We were recently stricken by a disaster, the Chernobyl nuclear power accident. It deeply affected the Soviet people and disturbed the world opinion. The power of the reactor suddenly increased. There was a considerable discharge of steam, and the subsequent reaction led to the formation of hydrogen, its explosion, and the destruction of the reactor, and the accompanying radioactive discharge.
От Совета министров СССР.
An official announcement from the Council of Ministers. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl atomic power station. One of the atomic reactors was damaged. The consequences of the accident are being taken care of. Help is being given to the victims of the accident. A government commission has been set up.
Less than 2 kilometers from Pripyat was the Vladimir Lenin nuclear power plant, but the world would quickly come to know it by its unofficial name, taken from the nearby town of Chernobyl. That morning, a series of events were set in motion which resulted in a huge explosion inside reactor number 4, releasing a cloud of radiation that would contaminate the entire area and beyond. At the time, it was the worst nuclear accident the world had ever known, and countries as far away as the UK would feel the effects. An exclusion zone was immediately set up 30 kilometres in all directions around the plant, while the authorities tried to deal with the disaster. On the 28th of April, 2 days after the explosion, the Soviet military ordered the evacuation of Pripyat. Its people were given just under 2 hours to collect the few personal belongings they could carry before a fleet of buses arrived. Hastily, almost 50,000 men, women and children were herded on board and driven away. According to reports, the mood inside the buses was calm and quiet. The message was that they would return to their homes in 3 days.
Давление на 25-м намного ниже. Да, и оно, воздух как бы подсасывает вот так вот постоянно. Типа как...
We've just arrived at the 30-kilometre exclusion zone, and hopefully, if our paperwork's all in order, we'll be granted access, and then from here it's just a short drive to Pripyat itself. With me on the trip I've got photographer Simon Crompton-Reed, we've got a driver, Igor, and we've also got our official Ukrainian escort, Misha. We don't need any protective equipment or clothing, but Misha does have an electronic dosimeter that will sound an alarm if the radiation levels get too high. Now, while the area is still contaminated, apparently the levels of radiation that we will be exposed to are no worse than a long-haul flight. I had a look at the dosimeter and it's giving a reading of 0.13 microsieverts, which if I was to do that in any built-up area, take a reading, it would be probably between 0.13 and 0.15 microsieverts. So apparently we're quite safe.
So right now we reached the observation site of the Chernobyl sarcophagus, the enormous shelter object site which still keeps the remnants of the destroyed reactor number 4 behind the extremely thick reinforced concrete walls. You see that facility in front of us. Right now we stand some 300 meters from that facility, and the readings we have here are 2.8. Average readings here are 3 point something or 4 point something. Every step we get close to that facility, the readings are increasing due to the fact that the main source of radiation here is that facility itself. So you can come sure that the readings are going up 3 point something. The specific feature of this facility, of this place, is that facility. That's the main source of radiation. This area is absolutely clean because this soil, this road, they were built in a few years after the accident, after new soil was brought here and the asphalt was laid. If I put this device just behind me like this, so you will see that the readings are going down. They drop down 3 point something, 2.9, 2.8, 2.7. The same will happen if I put this device behind this monument. So the readings will drop down till 1 point something. This device shows and catches the gamma rays that are spreading, but the gamma rays are strong enough to pass through these rocks, through these monuments. As a result, you see that the readings are 1 point something. If we take a device that measures the beta rays that are spreading around here, behind this monument, that device will show you totally zero background, because beta rays, they are not strong enough even to pass through this rock, through this monument.
Reactor number 4 itself was covered in a hastily constructed outer concrete sarcophagus which was designed to last 30 years. This is now approaching the end of its life, and this new shield will replace it. In the Bible, there is a passage that speaks of a great star called Wormwood, which turned all the waters bitter and killed anyone who drank it. Ominously, in Ukrainian, the word for wormwood and Chernobyl are almost identical. Each of these signs at the Wormwood Monument represents a town or village that no longer exists. In the days after the accident, the authorities evacuated the people and simply bulldozed the wooden houses into the ground. Only a few houses still remain close to Chernobyl town. Further out, Only a village kindergarten remains.
So right now we roam around the Kopachi village area, one of those villages where wooden houses were knocked down and buried underground by means of bulldozers and military vehicles. If we go inside the facility, the radiation background and the readings are totally safe due to the fact that this facility is a brick made. So these brick-made walls, they stop the rays, they dampen the rays that are spreading around here. So right now the readings are 0.3 and it drops down to 0.2. So here we have a couple of so-called hotspots or highly contaminated spots. One of those is right here. You can see that the ratings of radiation will change and will increase really fast. Right now we have the ratings 1.5 microsieverts of radiation, and here we have at around 12, 14 point something. It is a result of the radioactive dust rained down from the top of this kindergarten facility.
Between Chernobyl town and Pripyat, there is a small monument to the firefighters who were first on the scene. In less than half an hour, they were exposed to lethal doses of radiation and died a few days later.
Я бы сам на месте водителя бы высаживался. Знает ли тот, что он должен уступить газ? They armed.
Yeah.
We've just arrived at the Pripyat checkpoint, and Misha's currently outside just having a word with the guard, but I can't see any problems getting into Pripyat town. Officially, we're not allowed inside any of the buildings. The reason for this is that they're starting to crumble and they're rather unsafe, but hopefully we'll be getting in and having a good look round. The city of Pripyat was founded in 1970 and named after the nearby river. It was built mainly to house the workers at the nearby atomic plant and their families. Pripyat was also a young city whose population had an average age of 26. As a result, about 1,000 children were born in the town each year, but unlike in the West, the Soviets provided free childcare. Consequently, for its size, Pripyat had a large number of kindergartens, and here at the town's main nursery is a very eerie and strangely moving collection of toys and personal items. By the side of a toy rocket and aircraft is a very real gas mask, a stark reminder that these children were growing up at the height of the Cold War. Perhaps one of the most poignant items are these plasticine animals. Made by children in 1986, some still even have their fingerprints in them. Like everywhere else in Pripyat, anything of any value has been stolen by looters, and here at the music school is no exception. In the concert hall, all the seating has been ripped out, but strangely, a valuable grand piano has been left to rot. At the top of an apartment block, an old Soviet neon sign looks out over the town. From here, we get a bird's eye view of Pripyat and its proximity to reactor number 4. Outside is a chilling reminder of why the insides of buildings are officially off limits. Had I lived in Pripyat in 1986, I would have most likely been a pupil at this school. Walking around, I get an idea of how different education was under the Soviets. At the same time, it feels strangely familiar with all the usual classroom decorations. But I also get the impression that everything was taught from a very Russian perspective, even this chart illustrating the electromagnetic spectrum. For the children at this school, the threat of a gas attack from the west was very real, and nowhere is this more apparent than here in the canteen. Pripyat's inhabitants were generally well educated. By our Western terms, we would probably have considered them middle class. Consequently, crime levels were relatively low. However, like any town, it did have its problems. Most of the arrests were in fact alcohol related: drunkenness, making illegal vodka, and drink driving. The abandoned vehicles behind the police station were all used at the time of the disaster during the clear-up. Considered too contaminated to return to active service, yet not so contaminated to be buried underground, they have been ransacked for parts and left to rust. It's almost a cliché that physical fitness played a major role in life under the Soviets. Perhaps this explains why there were so many sports facilities in Pripyat. This swimming pool was just one of 3 in the town, along with 10 gyms and 2 football stadiums. It's strange to think that here at the Harbour Cafe, people once relaxed and enjoyed coffee with their friends. In its day, this stained glass window must have looked very impressive. But even now, broken and with pieces missing, it's profoundly moving, particularly now with the evening light behind it. Outside, the steps to the water still stand. This was once the scene of the annual Neptune Festival, a celebration of summer. Pripyat's main hotel and Palace of Culture formed a square that was the town's main hub and the location for many of its celebrations and festivals. After nearly 3 decades, it's slowly being reclaimed by time and nature.
On the roof there is a solid flat with
The Soviets believed that nuclear power was a force for good, and so coined the phrase, the friendly atom. Inside, there is virtually nothing left except broken glass under our feet. Just before the evacuation, the people of Pripyat were told to leave their windows open to allow air in and, somewhat ironically, let the radioactive dust to leave. In the lecture theatre, even the seats have been stolen. All that remains now are photographs to show that someone still cares about this place. Anything that has been left behind was of no value to the looters. These Soviet propaganda posters backstage at the theatre are a prime example. Bizarrely, it's not too hard to imagine this sports hall before the evacuation. It is surprisingly well preserved, especially this climbing rope. It's as if the people using it had only left a few moments ago.
So now we reached one of the most iconic places of Pripyat town. Just the main festivities for opening of these parks should happen on the 1st of May, but as a result of the accident that occurred some 5 days before 1st of May, the dreams didn't come true and we lost this place forever.
The Soviets were great believers in social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest society, and here at the hospital, this philosophy was put into practice. It's rather unnerving, the amount of vials and bottles that are still here. One can only guess what drugs they still contain. Stripped of everything except the metal cots, the newborn room is particularly eerie. Intensely personal documents lay everywhere. It's strange to think that the people listed in this log are probably still alive and well somewhere. It has been said that any town or city can be seen as merely a collection of buildings, empty boxes of concrete or brick. What makes anywhere home are the people inside those buildings, the lives they led, and more importantly, the relationships they made with each other. Although the people of Pripyat were successfully relocated, it was those relationships that were destroyed. Families separated, friends no longer able to go out together, and neighbours unable to greet a familiar face. This is just one of the many tragedies of Pripyat.